The Atheist channel is now just being taken over by the snake artist. Peace. An interesting thing is, let's have a look at the Bible. David, for example. David slayed a giant. David, for a long time, walked around with this great big sword, which was Goliath's sword, and everybody was, marveled at this. David had a problem with Saul, who was the king, and David was going to be the next one. There was a conflict there, and he couldn't take over until Saul was gone. Now go to Britain, and you've got the legend of King Arthur, who had a sword, and one of the legends of Arthur was that he fought a knight, and Uther, his father, had to die before King Arthur could continue that. We see similar themes running through, and every culture makes the religion their own, because if it's not relevant, it's not going to be there. I think America has made Christianity its own religion.
Sure. And along the same lines, you see, for the past year, for the church, when I've been making videos about Revelation, this is one of the things I saw, is that in Revelation you have this continuous Jesus versus the devil. The devil is a big dread dragon. Jesus has a big sword coming out of his mouth, coming with the armies. Is not much different than Hercules fighting the Hydra, or Thor fighting the snake at Ragnarok, or like what you're talking about with King Arthur.
Yeah.
There's this son of somebody important, savior figure, fighting some reptilian monster.
Yeah. Yeah, or the whole Thor thing is interesting too, because Odin, his father, went to the ends of the earth, and he couldn't find anyone that's worthy, anything that's worthy of sacrifice, so he sacrificed himself to himself by sticking a sword for himself and hanging himself on a tree at the end of the earth.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
That's what Odin did. So yeah, I mean, a lot of cultures will get something and make it their own, so it's relevant to them.
Exactly, and along those very same lines, there's other cultures, like in the Greek religion and in Mesopotamia, ancient Mesopotamia, is that how you pronounce it, Mesopotamia? Babylonian, Assyrian, Sumerian, these Middle Eastern cultures, there'll be like this pantheon of gods, where you got sort of like a overall, all dressed in white, powerful overlord, his wife, their brothers, and they'll run that culture for a while, and then maybe in 100 years or some undefined period of time where they try to make it more relevant again, something happens to that god, and there's a son of God. In the Greek religion, it was Hercules.
Yeah.
Hercules was the son of God. Thor was the son of God. This happens in all of them.
Yeah.
And then in the Greek religion, as a good example, because we're probably all more familiar with that than other ones, a few hundred years later, it was Dionysus. Dionysus was the new son of God who came for whatever concept of salvation they needed or whatever. It's always, when the culture starts, it's a pantheon. Later on, it's the son of God. At least with Christianity, I guess you skipped the overlord. That's what the Jews are. That's what the Jewish religion is the overlord God.
Yeah.
Until the son of God comes along and saves everybody. And then even within the Jewish thing, they had the different ones, like, though Moses wasn't the son of God, he was definitely sort of a Messiah that gave them the laws so that they could follow God. And then later on you had Joseph in the coat of many colors. His brothers sold him into slavery. He went, became rich, prophet, blah, 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 came back, prodigal son. There's this father-son relationship all throughout the thing. It all leads up to God the Father, whatever the religion is, because, with the Norse religion, the Greek religions, and all these things, we call them myth now, but people believed that shit was real. That was their religion. It's just the same pattern played over and over. The Egyptians had the same thing with Osiris was the overlord god, and then Horus came later. And they got that from, the ones before them. And because of the agricultural revolution 10,000 years ago, whenever that started, humans, Homo sapiens, been around for like 150,000, 200,000 years. So you've got 150,000 years or so before modern society where these stories were probably passed orally. And like I said, they probably originated with mapping out the astrology of things and turned into these stories. They have the same factor of the God overlord. They have the same factor of the sun coming along later and saving them. And how this is also relevant, and this is also part of what brought me to be an atheist, is when I started looking into these primitive cultures before the civilization. You would see this pattern, and this is a little bit similar to chimpanzees in that you have this leader, the chieftain of the tribe. He was strong, better hunter, blah, 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 whatever physical aspects it was. The might make right, because we still have the might makes right today with the complex, military complex, spreading their religion. Same thing back then. Then you had somebody else who in the tribe who maybe he wasn't the best hunter or whatever else, but he told a good story around the fire.
Yeah.
Told a good story around the fire. Maybe he pointed to the stars and made them relevant to what I'm saying here about mapping out the zodiac and the seasons and things like that. And what happened here was the very beginnings of the chieftain was the government, the state. Mm-hmm. The storyteller was the religion. And this symbiotic relation started there. And what happened was that the king was going to have a son, the chieftain, and his son might not have been the strongest warrior. Maybe just not the strongest warrior, but he wants to guarantee that his bloodline is going to be the next chieftain. Yeah. So he gives an authority to the storyteller, who is the shaman type, the mystic. And since he gives authority to, says his stories are true, in return the shaman says the king is holy, pointed out by God, so that his son becomes the direct descendant. So you've got the what evolved into the holy right of kings, started in the primitive lands, you know what I mean? And you can see this in the American Indians, you can see this in the African tribal cultures, South American cultures today, you can see this happening. Same thing before the agricultural whatever with, you know, the Arabic or white people or whatever else. So when I started, like you say, pieces of the puzzle. Yes, I started seeing this and this and this and this, it became apparent that Christianity is huge now because we have the guns to back it up.
Yeah, that's right. And the whole thing of the king wanting the son to continue the line is, again, one of the things that drives evolution is that you want your genetics to continue. The whole reason you've got a sex drive is because you want your genetics to continue. And really, when it comes to evolution, it's not so much survival of the fittest that's a big part of it. It's survival of the best breeder. And if they can pass the genetics on, you know, it really does become the purpose of life.
And the humans, you know, we're not so much driven by, at least when we talk about the right of kings aspect, it's not so much driven by who has the best genetics. It's just my genetics needs to be in control or whatever.
That's right. So it does become survival of the fittest because they've got the guns and the weapons to back it up.
Sure, sure.
Peace.
That's cool.